So we'll be hearing today from 3 faculty members who have been developing some free curriculum on 5G skills and concepts. Chris Kadlec from Georgia Southern University, Bill Saichek, who's Emeritus from Orange Coast College, and Gordon Snyder from Holyoke Community College.
This is a special project that we have put together to come up with some lecture materials and lab materials for everyone to be able to use on 5G, which is obviously a hot topic on infrastructure. And we have piloted it a bit and want to have you benefit a little bit from it. And if you're interested, we're certainly willing to follow up. Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay, so just to provide some context, we all probably already know all this stuff, but 5G is faster, more reliable, lower latency, less energy. It'll be fast and it'll be everywhere. We can show these slides because I have it there with the link, the bottom there, there's a link to a PwC report on 5G. Applications, I think Gordon will mention this in his talk, but I don't think anyone really knows for sure how 5G will be used. We have ideas about applications in healthcare, manufacturing, energy, autonomous vehicles, sensor, edge computing, but until it's really out there running everywhere, I'm not sure we even know where it's going to go next. It's so fast and amazing.
To just add on to what Mark just said, this will be a disruptive technology. We're going to see lots of innovations, and we can talk about all kinds of things that are out there, but I don't know that we really know.
Right, well said. Now we're going to turn over to Gordon Snyder. One of the things we'll be developing is a recorded lecture, and so Gordon's going to give you sort of a sneak preview of that. It's longer than this. He's going to give 15 minutes or so, sort of talking about the 5G skills and concepts. After he does his talk, we'll discuss briefly some of the deliverables we'll be providing to you, hopefully in the spring of 2022.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'm Gordon Snyder. I've probably met some of you. I was, for a long time, the director of the National Center Information Communications Technology, or ICT Center at Springfield Technical Community College. I'm now at Holyoke Community College, and I'm teaching electrical engineering courses now. My background is electrical engineering, so physical layer is kind of where the approach we're taking with 5G here I'm going to take. So we'll go through this kind of quick. Again, this is just sort of an overview highlight presentation. But there's my email address if you have any questions. About 2 weeks ago, Bill Saichek, I did a presentation for one of his classes, and there were some questions about why we're doing this, and I'm going to work in some additional material here. But I know you're doing something on blockchain right now. Blockchain is something that's going to really benefit from 5G. But we're seeing these what they're calling decentralized finance protocols, Web 3.0 wallets, blockchain domains and browsers. So the whole internet is changing very rapidly, and we're shifting to this what they call Web 3.0. But cloud computing, augmented reality, blockchains, and IoT are some of the many drivers. And as Chris was saying earlier, who knows what's going to come about with all this stuff. But the transition from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 is not going to be fully realized until we hit all the major building blocks. And 5G is one of those major building blocks. So that's why we want to talk about it. There's not going to be a lot of technical content, but there will be some. So let's continue on here. We've all, maybe some of you, I know I have, I do remember back to the 1980s when these first phones came out, these 1G phones. We've made this massive transition in most of our lifetimes here. We're talking only 40 years here to 5G, and you can see this sort of shows an evolution. 3G, this is back probably BlackBerry days, 2001 or so, and the transition again just continued forward. So talk a little bit about that. Just comparing speeds, it's much faster. You can get an idea here. Download a 2-hour movie with over 3G. That's, I got to change the slide, but that's going to be 3G. That's 26 hours. 4G is around 6 minutes. With 5G, you're looking at about 3.6 seconds to download a 2-hour movie. So it's just a massive shift in speed. We're going to see a shift, what the telephone companies call the local loop. Okay, right now you've got probably copper. I know at my house, I've still got copper wires coming in. And those copper wires, copper wire pair were probably put in by the telephone company. Some of these copper pairs are over 100 years old. You get into some of the older parts of the country, Boston in particular. 120 years, some of this stuff is pushed, and they're still being used. But you're just going to see it replaced. And Verizon has done some replacing up here in the Northeast with their FiOS product. They sold a lot of it off. I think Frontier picked up a lot of it. Different parts of the country. But FiOS was fiber to the prem or fiber to the home. They've changed gears. The push now is 5G, and you're going to see 5G coming into people's homes. It's either going to be point to multi-point in maybe more rural areas where you've got an antenna feeding an individual home, or in more residential areas where the houses are closer together, you'll see these mesh network configurations. And there's a couple pictures here over on the left with some 5G antennas for fixed wireless access. So they're taking out a lot of the copper. Copper's worth a lot of money now. So these telcos are doing, they're stripping out a lot of the copper, and they're selling it. We'll talk a little bit about that. Different marketing and use cases. Mark mentioned some of these earlier. Massive IoT, enhanced mobile broadband, AR and VR, or XR is the term a lot of people are using now. And you get into things like remote surgery, full self-driving, a lot of neat stuff going on. Online gaming. This is an additional slide on this decentralized internet, and this is something I want to build on a little bit in this presentation. But we're looking at a decentralized data structure. So you've got a group of computers, and that's what this is over here on the right. With each computer, they're all interconnected, and each is playing a specific role, whether it be as a node, a verifier, developer, or just a participant on the network. All computers in the network have the same access to information. Data is transparent to the network. Secure timestamping, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so there's some considerations. There's things people are going to have to deal with. And these are IT students are going to be dealing with this stuff. Security and privacy in this kind of a network, verifiability, different economic models. I've been mining for almost a year now on my iPhone. Cryptocurrency. There's a cryptocurrency called Pi, P-I, that was started by a group out of Stanford. And there's now, I think there's close to 30 million people mining Pi right now on phones. So we're seeing this transition. You no longer need a server to mine cryptocurrencies. Tools, again, Web 3.0 browsers. That Pi company just came out with a 3.0 browser, which is pretty cool. It's worth checking out. Scalability, user adoption, interoperability. So we're seeing this shift, this decentralized internet, and all this interconnectivity, not all of it, but a lot of this interconnectivity is going to be done with 5G. So what does that mean? What does that mean for your students? What kind of applications are going to they be developing? What kinds of networks are they going to be supporting? So it's a very transitional time as we shift gears here. But then let's jump to the next slide here. We talk a little bit about tech in this presentation. We talk a little bit about spectrum and where 5G sits in this in spectrum. A little bit more on spectrum. There's actually two different wavelengths that are used. There's a longer wavelength and a shorter wavelength for lower frequency, higher frequency for 5G. The lower frequencies have longer wavelengths. They travel longer distances, and they'll go through walls and trees and stuff like that much more readily than the higher frequency, shorter wavelength stuff. So talk a little bit about the difference between frequency and wavelength. Not much. And this will be modular, so you'll be able to skip over some of this stuff if you want. But yeah, here's a slide here showing what wavelength is. Again, it's pretty basic, and what frequency is, okay? There's a reciprocal relationship between frequency and wavelength. Higher frequencies have shorter wavelengths and vice versa. So we talk a little bit about that, how they're related. Okay, look at a Wi-Fi signal, and if you look at a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal, this is a sample calculation here where the students can calculate the wavelength in meters. So it's kind of neat. It gives them an idea of what's flying around in the air. And if you look at a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal, it's got a wavelength of around 12.5 centimeters. So I don't know, I think that's pretty interesting, 4.92 inches. And then there'll be some class exercises where, and what I'll do is I'll write up, there'll be a teacher's guide with this. So these calculations will all be available to the instructors. So, we have them just do some basic calculations on 5G frequencies. And what do we got for wavelength? Why is wavelength important? Which signals will travel further, penetrate walls and things like that. So you've already talked about a lot of this stuff, I think, in your when you discuss Wi-Fi with your classes. So we're just dealing with some different frequencies with 5G. The other thing that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on, and I've taught both IT classes and I've taught electromagnetics classes to electrical engineering students. This is always kind of an eye-opener. We talk about how signal gets modulated. What's the difference between baseband and broadband? Now this QAM stuff, it's quadratic amplitude modulation, is broadband modulation. It's been used in the early days of the old modems, voice network modems, the 56K modems, for example, that we were all using 25 years ago. This modulation technique has been around for a long time. Actually started with some television technology. It's used for Wi-Fi. It's used for fiber optic communications now. Computers are digital devices, so you've got a digital signal, ones and zeros. But to transmit over long distances, these signals need to be converted to an analog signal. So they get converted to what is a sine wave, a series of sine waves. And it's done with this quadratic amplitude modulation. And what they do is they modulate phase and amplitude. So where the wave starts and the height of the wave. And they do that, and again, we're not going to go into details here, but in the actual material we do, you get these constellation diagrams, okay? You can take one cycle of a sine wave or one sine wave, and you can transmit multiple bits per cycle using this QAM, which is very interesting and very powerful way to transmit, 64, 128 bits in one cycle. So you can really transmit lots of information very quickly in a wireless environment or on a piece of fiber using this technique. And again, it's broadband modulation. So Mark mentioned some of this stuff already. So we're going to have a more efficient network. Lots of Internet of Things opportunities, high connection densities, things like that. Highly reliable and very low latency is what we're looking at. And this is a picture, I think Chris might have taken this picture here. And I look at this picture and I can say, okay, there's this sort of more rectangular looking antenna here. That's a 5G antenna. These antennas down here are a little lower 4G antennas. They're sort of got rounded edges and they look more almost cylindrical. They have a little more curve to them, I guess. The directionals, the antennas are directional and they're more efficient. This is another couple pictures that Chris took at Georgia Southern, but you can see here these 4G antennas here and 5Gs here. So you just mention this to your students and say, hey, on your way home, they'll start to look at antennas and they'll say, oh, there's a 4G antenna, there's a 5G antenna. You can sort of watch the transition. The telcos get about 10 years ROI on these antennas. So you'll see the 4G stuff start to go away and be replaced by 5G as those 4G antennas hit those marks, hit that 10-year mark. Network slicing, okay, and this is really cool. You can do this with 5G. So you can slice up the bandwidth. You may have a slice for smartphones. You may have a slice for autonomous driving. You may have a slice for Internet of Things, other slices. So and this is very interesting too. I think I don't know if I took that slide out or not. Let me look here. Oh yeah, let's back up here. So think of yourself in a car, okay? And maybe you're driving down the highway and you've got a autonomous vehicle. So you've got a vehicle equipped with full self-driving, okay? And you've got vehicle-to-vehicle communications going on. So your car's talking to the car in front of you, talking to the car in back of you, talking to cars that are coming at you. You're also communicating with stoplights and stop signs and stuff like that. So the autonomous vehicle slice, you want to be really fast and super low latency and super reliable. So you'll be able to give that slice priority, okay? And maybe you've got another slice for backseat entertainment. Maybe your kids are in the backseat and they're watching some videos, playing some video games, those kinds of things. You want the autonomous vehicle slice to have the highest reliability and connection speed and lowest latency. Okay, so you want that to be the highest priority. Maybe the backseat communications, gaming, video stuff, that gets second. And then maybe your car is connected and it's being monitored for different services like brake life or oil changes and things like that. No oil change in an electric vehicle though, but so that would give you probably the least level of priority. You can communicate a little. You don't need to get back to the manufacturer right away so they can send you an email telling you have to have your oil changed. So you're going to see this kind of slicing going on with 5G. As far as deployment goes, most of us have 4G phones right now. You can get a phone now with both a 4G and a 5G radio in it, and you will see this transition again to 5G as these antennas run out their life expectancy up on the towers. There'll be some additional class exercises. You're going to see the millimeter wave, the higher speed or the higher frequency versions of 5G in congested areas. You're going to see millimeter wave antennas on highways, probably every 150 feet. Some people are talking for vehicle-to-vehicle autonomous vehicle communications. So and you're not going to see these giant towers anymore either. You're going to see the smaller towers with antennas, more densely distributed. So we talk here, do a little research, find out about these things. And this stuff is constantly changing. So you're going to see, but millimeter wave service, the higher frequency stuff is going to go into selected urban locations, again, high density areas. And then a little research on 5G phones, advantages and disadvantages of fixed wireless service, 5G to your home with an antenna on top of your house. And then the other thing we're going to see, and we're already seeing it with the low Earth orbit satellite stuff, the Starlink stuff, the stuff that Elon Musk is doing, for example. We're really blanketing the low Earth orbit space with these satellites, and we're seeing internet service. And you're going to have a phone they'll have 5G radio, and it's going to have a satellite radio in it too. So you're going to be able to communicate in places. Like we do a lot of fishing offshore, and we'll get out 25, 30, 40 miles offshore, and you don't have any cell service out there. It would be great. We do have a cell beacon beacon system right now we use for emergencies, but it would be great to be able to take phone calls and things like that. You'll be able to do that with Starlink, for example. So again, the whole idea is to get students thinking about what's going on, giving them a little bit of introduction on how this information gets from one point to another. And who knows? I mean, maybe we'll have some students come out of these programs that'll develop some of these sort of new and emerging technologies that we can't even imagine right now. So,
all right, thank you for that, Gordon. So last thing here is deliverables. So the idea is, Gordon will do a longer version of that that's pre-recorded that you can then show in your class or have your students watch on their own time. The virtual labs, a teacher guide, student assignments. So Chris and Bill, do you want to talk briefly about the labs and some other things that they'll be providing in addition to Gordon's lecture?
So the labs, right now, most of them are based around some of the captures and then some visualization of how they work. They'll be packaged within a virtual machine that you could drop into NetLab, or you could run on its own. So we want to make it as accessible to everybody as possible.
And one area that I think is going to be very cool about the whole thing is going to be looking at how not so much 5G as a technology, that's fantastic, and I'm really excited, but how we can blend this 5G information in with existing technologies. I'm really looking forward to working on methodologies to incorporate it into the IoT curriculum. Because right now, as Gordon mentioned earlier, that's going to be a huge area where the two will just, great convergence between the two areas where I can see it. So I can definitely see us going into, starting with this, getting the technology familiar with people, and then looking at a more integrated solution.
We're just looking to have modules or lectures that can be added in and some virtual labs that can be added in, because this is obviously an emerging area, that has emerged and will continue to emerge. We already have phones that are 5G and lots of other things that are 5G, and a lot of the curriculum does not address it. So that's the purpose. And I thank you to Gordon for the big chunk of work already done, and to Chris and to Bill for the work that is still to come. Actually, they've been involved the whole time as well in putting this all together and figuring out what to do. Thank you, everyone, for presenting.
Thank you for your time, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Chris, Gordon, and Bill. And this is being recorded, so once we have it all polished and up, you can share with your colleagues and listen to those who couldn't join us. All right. So have a good afternoon.